I should have known it wasn't just a dinner when Liam called, all soft-spoken and apologetic, asking if I'd come over for a family meeting. I should have smelled the trap. But part of me, some old, stupid part, still hoped he was my son again. The one who used to ride shotgun in my Chevy, asking about engines and baseball stats, not stock options and inheritance law. I showed up at their house in Oak Brook right at 7. The place looked like it always did, like a glossy real estate listing, not a home. No toys in the yard, no scuffed shoes by the door, just a pristine stone, fake warmth, and a porch light that flickered like it knew something was off. Inside, the whole scene was staged. Liam in his tailored blazer, Emma perched like a vulture in her designer dress, and 2 lawyers I'd never seen before already seated at the dining room table. No casserole in sight, no grandkids running around, just a folder on the table and a pen placed dead center. Liam tried to play it cool, like this was just some casual catch-up. "Dad, thanks for coming. We thought it'd be good to talk, get everything on the same page." But I could see the twitch in his jaw. He was nervous, desperate. I'd seen that look before, back when he crashed his second startup and begged me for a bailout. Emma smiled that corporate smile of hers. "Michael, we're thinking ahead. Legacy planning. We just want what's fair. You've done so much. It's time we all share in it." Fair. That word felt like acid in my throat. I didn't sit. I just stood there, staring at the papers they slid across the table. A revised will, new power of attorney clauses, a sudden change of beneficiaries, all of it drawn up like I was already 6 feet under. "You want me to sign this tonight?" I asked, voice low but tight. Emma tilted her head like I was being unreasonable. "It just streamlines everything. You've got so much on your plate, and with the market being volatile..." I cut her off. "You trying to take my house? My business? Everything your mother and I built?" Liam's tone sharpened. "You're sitting on millions, Dad. And for what? To die with it? You gave me crumbs growing up. You think paying for college and a few bad investments makes you a saint?" My pulse thudded so hard it made my temples ache. "Bad investments," I repeated. "That crumb was $250,000, Liam. You blew it on a vape company run by a guy named Blaze." Emma flinched, just barely, but Liam pushed on, his face red. "You always held it over me, made me feel like I owed you something. You used money to control me." "No," I said. "I used money to rescue you, repeatedly, and you took it every damn time." The lawyers sat still, probably used to family drama, but not this kind of heat. I noticed one glance toward the door, probably thinking of a polite exit strategy. I finally sat, just to slow the storm inside me. I picked up the pen, clicked it once, then set it down. "Funny thing," I said, "I brought a guest, too." Liam blinked. "What?" The door to the hallway creaked open behind me. Their faces turned pale the moment they saw who stepped in. Ron, my oldest friend, former cop, now a licensed private investigator with a file thick as a phone book under his arm. Emma's face drained of blood. Liam's shoulders dropped like someone pulled the bones out of him. I leaned back in the chair, eyes never leaving my son. This betrayal? This little stunt? It's the last mistake you're ever going to make with my name on it. Liam opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I turned to Ron. "Let's get started." Because if they wanted war over my legacy, I'd show them exactly how much of it was built to last. Ron dropped the thick manila folder on the table with a thud that echoed like a warning shot. Nobody reached for it. Emma's nails gripped the edge of her chair, and Liam sat frozen. His lips parted like he couldn't decide if he should fight or flee. I didn't give him time to choose. "Everything in that file?" I said calmly. "Proof. Of your debts, the ones you tried to hide, the loans you never paid, the forged signatures, and Emma." I turned toward her slowly, letting her feel the heat before the burn. "The shell charity, the foundation that's just a tax dodge to siphon money into a luxury account, all of it's documented. Frankly, I didn't think you'd be this sloppy." Emma swallowed hard, eyes darting toward Liam, but he didn't look back. His face was pale now, his confidence leaking like a punctured tire. One of the lawyers finally spoke, clearing his throat. "Mr. Crawford, perhaps we could reschedule this discussion to allow everyone time to—" "To what?" I snapped. "To rework the scam? To hide the money trail? You sat here and watched them push forged documents across the table. If you didn't know, you're a fool. If you did, you're complicit. Either way, this meeting's over." Ron opened the folder. Pages of bank statements, credit card transactions, and photos fanned across the table like playing cards in a rigged hand. There was Liam with a leased Porsche he defaulted on. Emma shopping in New York 2 days after claiming financial distress. Letters from creditors. Even a handwritten note Emma had left in a storage unit. "Michael won't live forever. We need to force his hand." That one damn near made me put my fist through the wall when Ron found it. "You snooped through my things?" Liam finally spoke, his voice thin, cracking like a teenager's again. "No," I said. "I hired someone to find the truth. Because clearly, the truth isn't something you believe in anymore." Emma stood abruptly. "This is harassment." "No," Ron said, his voice like gravel. "This is documentation. And if Michael wanted, I could have walked in here with a lawyer and a cop. But he didn't. Not yet." She didn't respond. Just grabbed her purse, her fingers trembling more than she wanted us to see. Liam rose slowly, still not looking at me, his expression a mess of shame and something uglier. Resentment. "Why are you doing this?" he said quietly. "You'd rather ruin us than just let go?" I stood too, keeping my voice steady. "You did this. You chose lies. You tried to rob me before I was even gone. You want to talk about letting go? I let go of my retirement to fund your failures. I let go of sleep, peace, self-respect, so you wouldn't drown. And every time I pulled you up, you reached for my wallet instead of my hand." He didn't argue, couldn't. "Don't come back until you remember what it means to earn something," I said. "You're not entitled to a damn cent until you do." The front door opened and closed behind them, leaving a vacuum in the room, a silence more final than shouting. I turned back to Ron. "They'll come back," I said. Ron nodded. "Of course they will. Greed doesn't sleep." I looked at the will on the table, still untouched, then picked it up and tore it in half. "I need a new one, ironclad." "I know a guy," he said with a smirk. "Make the call," I told him. "This isn't about punishment anymore, it's about protection." He started gathering the documents. "You sure you're ready for what comes next?" "I wasn't before," I said. "But now? I'm wide awake." Ron left with the folder, and I sat back down, staring at the empty table. This was no longer about my son or his wife. It was about reclaiming everything I let them steal, piece by piece. My trust, my pride, my name. They had declared war. Now it was my turn to fight back, and I was done playing defense. The next morning I didn't waste time. I called Ellis Martin, sharpest state attorney in Cook County. No nonsense, always 5 steps ahead, and more importantly, someone I trusted when trust felt like a luxury. We met downtown in her office overlooking the Chicago River. Cold light poured through the windows, bouncing off the polished floors. It felt sterile, safe, clinical. Exactly what I needed. "I need a new will," I told her before I even sat down, "and I want it built like a damn fortress." She didn't blink. "Revocable trust?" "Absolutely, with conditions. Liam and Emma get nothing unless every cent of their old debts is paid back, with interest. And I mean every cent, not a dollar less." Ellis opened a legal pad and started scribbling. "You want to create a charitable clause?" I nodded. "Children's Foundation. My wife Margaret used to volunteer at one. I want the majority of the estate moved there once I pass." She raised an eyebrow. "You're not planning to pass any time soon, are you?" "No, but they are." She smirked, then got to work. I leaned back in the chair, watching the city move below us like ants in a jar. It made me think of Liam again, how fast he went from the kid with scraped knees and wild dreams to a grown man willing to sell his own father out for a quick payday. Ellis finished the preliminary draft in under an hour. I'll need to bring in a notary and 2 witnesses, then we'll get this sealed. After that, you're untouchable." I left her office with a folder thicker than a Sunday newspaper and a head full of memories I didn't ask for. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was how easily they'd done it. No guilt, no hesitation. That afternoon, I called Ron again. I want to know everything they've got left. Financials, properties, hidden accounts, storage units. I don't care how small, he laughed. You want to go full scorched earth? They tried to bury me alive. I'm just digging back. He agreed to dig deeper, and I knew he would. Ron's loyalty wasn't cheap, but it was absolute. By evening, I was home, pouring a whiskey I wouldn't drink. The glass just sat there, cold and untouched, catching the glow of the hallway lamp. I picked up the framed photo of Margaret from the mantel. Her smile always seemed to know something I didn't. I wondered what she'd say about all this. Probably something like, "You raised him to take shortcuts, Michael. Now he's choking on the easy road. She warned me once." Back when Liam was still in college, blowing through tuition money like it was Monopoly cash. "He needs to struggle," she'd said, "or he'll never grow a spine." And I didn't listen. I sat at my desk and opened another drawer, pulling out the old ledger from when I first started Crawford Automotive, back when I was working 12-hour days and sleeping on a cot in the back office. That business became everything. Not just income. Legacy. Sweat turned into steel and wheels. Now they wanted it because they thought it was owed, not earned, never earned. A noise outside snapped me out of it. Tires on gravel, a car idling in the driveway. I moved to the front window, careful not to be seen. Liam, standing at the edge of the porch. No Emma, no lawyers, just him, hands in his pockets, staring up at the door like it might bite. He didn't ring the bell. Just stood there for a few minutes before turning around and getting back in the car. Guilt, regret, maybe, but I didn't move. He didn't deserve comfort, not yet, maybe not ever. Back at my desk, I pulled out the new documents from Elise, still warm from the printer. I thumbed through the pages slowly, feeling the weight of every clause, every line, every bulletproof condition. This wasn't just protection anymore. This was war strategy. And I'd only just opened fire. The next morning, Ron texted me one word: bingo. I was at the breakfast table, dry toast in one hand, legal documents in the other. When I saw his message, I pushed the plate aside and called him. "I found their leverage point," he said without preamble. "Liam's sitting on $50,000 in credit card debt, 2 missed mortgage payments, and a business partner threatening to sue him over breach of contract. Emma's worse. Her personal stylist filed a claim for unpaid invoices. And guess what? She's funneling personal expenses through that bogus charity she started." I didn't even try to hide my smile. Paper trails? Plenty. Emails, invoices, receipts. I've got them all. Bring everything to Elis today. Let her package it neat and ugly. "You sure you want to go nuclear this fast?" "They made the rules," I said. "I'm just finally playing by them." I hung up and stared out the kitchen window. The garden Margaret used to tend was overgrown now, weeds choking the roses. I used to promise I'd keep it up after she passed, but I didn't. Not really. I kept her picture framed, her memory dusted, but the life we built, I'd let Liam stomp through it like a parade route. Not anymore. By noon, Ellis had the new documents from Ron. She called me from her office, voice calm, but sharper than usual. "What we have here, Michael, is not just leverage. It's a grenade. If we release this to their creditors, it'll sink them." "Good," I said, "but it'll get messy, public, ugly. They wanted a war. Let it be ugly." Ellis was silent for a second. "There's one more option," she said. "We hit them softly first, an anonymous tip to one of Liam's investors. Plant a little doubt. Let them sweat. When the walls start closing in, they'll either panic or come crawling. And if they crawl, then we step on their fingers," she said. I laughed, the sound dry and unfamiliar. "Do it." That evening I drove out to Neepville, parked across from Liam and Emma's place again. Their house looked like it belonged in a magazine, all white columns and carefully trimmed hedges. But I knew better now. Behind that clean exterior, rot was spreading. I watched as Emma burst out the front door, her phone glued to her ear, pacing the driveway like a lioness in heels. Her voice carried even through my rolled-up windows. "No, I don't know how they found out. Just fix it. Lie if you have to." A second later, Liam stormed out after her, waving a letter. "They're freezing the accounts. Emma, the investor called me personally. He said someone sent him a report." She turned on him so fast I thought she'd slap him. "You said it was clean. You said no one would trace it." Liam's face crumpled, red and blotchy. "I didn't think." "No, you didn't," she snapped, then shoved past him and disappeared into the house. He stood there deflated, staring down at the letter in his hands. I recognized that posture. I'd seen it when he was 15 and wrecked his first car. I paid the deductible, I cleaned up the mess. This time I didn't move. My phone buzzed. Elise again. "Tip's been received. Damage is underway." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "Let's make it bleed." At home, I poured myself another whiskey I wouldn't drink and sat at the desk with a fresh sheet of paper. I started listing every asset I still had, properties, vehicles, business shares. Then I started marking which ones were vulnerable and which ones were safe. This wasn't grief anymore, or even revenge. It was clarity. Liam and Emma had set this fire. I was just feeding it oxygen. I spent the next 2 days prepping for the next phase. I wasn't just trying to win. I was making sure they couldn't crawl back from it. Ellis had already started the process of transferring half my assets into a private charitable trust, completely untouchable by Liam or Emma. The rest, she said, would be filtered through a cascade of legal barriers that would make any challenge a bureaucratic nightmare. Meanwhile, Ron kept digging. Every text he sent made my blood boil hotter. Storage units packed with unopened electronics Emma had purchased on the charity's dime. Credit card receipts showing charges at casinos while Liam claimed he was on business trips. They didn't just betray me. They flaunted it, like it was a game. The final straw came Thursday night. I was eating alone again when my doorbell rang. I opened it expecting a delivery or maybe a neighbor, but instead there was a letter taped to my front door. No envelope, just bold black text typed across a single sheet. "Stop what you're doing or you'll regret it." I stood on the porch, the paper fluttering in my hand, rain starting to drizzle. The sky above was a flat slab of gray. I looked out toward the road, half expecting someone to be watching. No one. Just silence and cold wind. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my study, Margaret's photo watching me, the letter on the desk beside a loaded drawer I hadn't opened in years. That line, "You'll regret it," felt like gasoline poured on dry timber. Liam had never threatened me, not directly. But this was cowardice, anonymity, and that told me exactly who it came from. The next morning I called Ron. "I need surveillance, now." "You thinking home security or the serious kind?" "Both," I said. "Cameras outside and in, and I want a tail on Liam and Emma, full detail. I want to know where they sleep, who they meet, what they touch." Ron didn't argue. "I'll set it up." By the end of the day, 2 guys in an unmarked van had wired my entire house. Backyard, front porch, driveway, even the study where I kept the critical documents, motion sensors, live feeds. I could monitor everything from my phone. I wasn't taking any more chances. Meanwhile, Ellis filed an injunction to block any potential power of attorney claims Liam might try to float. She also contacted the board at my company, Crawford Automotive, and began transitioning full operational control to my CFO, someone who'd earned their stripes, not inherited them. "Your name," she told me, "means something in this town. But if you give them a crack to slither through, they'll take it. You leave that door open even a little, Michael, and they'll huff and puff and blow it wide open." I nodded. "Then we bolt it shut." Late that night, I watched the security footage on my phone. At 2:13 a.m., a figure walked up to the porch and stood there for nearly 2 full minutes. Hoodie up. Face turned from the camera. They didn't ring the bell, didn't knock, just stood still. Then they turned and walked away. I downloaded the footage and sent it straight to Ron. Get me a match. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about principle and safety. I'd worked for everything I had. I built my company from the dirt, survived recessions, lawsuits, betrayals, far worse than this, and still came out clean. But no one, not even my own blood, got to sneak into my home under the cover of darkness and threaten me into silence. By morning, I had made my decision. I wasn't waiting anymore. The next meeting was going to be on my turf, on my terms, and this time it wouldn't end with warnings, it would end with consequences. The meeting was set for Tuesday, neutral ground, my attorney's office downtown, 3rd floor, overlooking the city like a judge from the clouds. Ellis made the arrangements. Liam and Emma agreed without a fight. That told me they were desperate. Good. I arrived early, wore the old gray suit Margaret had picked out for our anniversary dinner years back. The fabric was a little tighter now, but the weight of it felt right. Grounding. I stood by the window watching the traffic flow like blood through arteries, the city unaware that a reckoning was about to unfold. They walked in together, Liam with a duffel coat slung over one shoulder, Emma in some power blazer, dark sunglasses, still on, despite the overcast sky. She didn't say a word, just gave me a tight nod and sat across the table. Liam tried to smile. It died halfway up his cheek. Ellis entered last, papers in hand, calm and focused. "Let's begin," she said. The first document on the table was a cease and desist, drawn up by Elise and co-signed by my company's board. It formally barred Liam from using the Crawford name in any business venture, charity, or promotional materials. His mouth fell open. "You're disowning me?" he croaked. "No," I said. "I'm protecting what I built." Emma leaned forward. "You're cutting us off from the name, from the legacy?" I met her eyes dead on. "From the brand. The legacy belongs to people who honor it. You don't." Then Ellis slid over the next folder, statements, account freezes, pending audits from a couple of charities Liam had funneled cash through. Not all in his name, but close enough to burn. Emma's jaw tensed. "You're coming after us financially?" "No," Ellis cut in. "The law is. We just opened the door." Liam's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. He paused on one bank statement. "You hacked us." Ellis raised an eyebrow. "We investigated, legally. You're the one who signed public documents full of lies." Emma stood up suddenly. "This isn't mediation. This is an ambush." "No," I said, standing too. "This is me drawing a line." Ellis folded her hands. "Here are your options. Walk away. Forfeit any claim to Michael's estate. We'll issue a public statement explaining your decision to focus on your own path. Or keep fighting, and we push every piece of this into the hands of the IRS, state fraud investigators, and every one of your creditors." Emma looked stunned, like she didn't understand how it had flipped on her so fast. Liam stayed quiet, his head lowered, face buried in his hands. "Dad," he finally whispered, "we're not bad people. We were just scared. We thought you were preparing to shut us out." "You shut yourselves out," I snapped. "You chose greed. You forged documents. You threatened me." Ellis placed a final paper on the table. "This one is a formal relinquishment. If you sign it, this ends here. No jail, no trials, just silence and distance. Your father walks. You vanish. And no one hears a word of this outside these walls." Emma stared at the page like it was poison. "You wanted an empire," I said. "Now take the exit before it collapses on you." Silence. Then Emma snatched the pen, scribbled her name like she was carving it into wood. Liam hesitated, eyes flicking between us. "You're my father," he said, voice cracking. "You're supposed to believe in me." I nodded slowly. "I did, until you gave me every reason not to." He signed. When they left, the door clicked shut with a sound that felt final. Ellis didn't speak, neither did I. We sat there in the silence of victory, ugly, necessary, earned. After they left that day, I stayed in the conference room for nearly an hour. Just sat there, the documents spread across the table like battlefield trophies. I didn't feel triumphant, not yet. The anger was still there, yes, but now it was quieter, settled deep in my bones, not boiling on the surface. Ellis finally broke the silence. "You did the right thing," she said. I nodded, but the words didn't land. She closed her folder, sliding everything neatly back into her briefcase. "It's going to take them a while to realize it's over. People like that don't accept endings. They keep spinning." "They'll spin themselves into the ground," I muttered. Back home, the rain had finally stopped. The driveway was still slick, the trees outside my window heavy with water. I stood on the porch for a while, listening to the wet world drip itself dry. Then I went inside, poured a whiskey, and actually drank it this time. The burn felt earned. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I wandered into the study, flipped on the desk lamp, and opened the drawer I hadn't touched in years. Inside was Margaret's old journal, leather-bound, soft from time. I opened to a page where she'd once written in pencil, "You don't owe anyone peace if they come to you with war." I ran my thumb across the words. She would have known what to do. She always did. The next morning, Ron called. "You're not going to believe this." "What now?" "They're trying to sell the house, quietly, through a private agent." "Desperate already?" "Panicked. And there's more. Emma's been calling people in her network, trying to find dirt on you." I laughed, a deep, bitter kind of laugh. Let her dig. The only thing she'll find is that I paid for her wedding, her vacations, and her gym membership. "You want me to shut it down?" "No," I said. "Let them scramble. Let them feel the weight." He paused. "You're not worried they'll try something stupid?" I turned toward the window, watching the wind push dead leaves across the lawn. They already did. That day, I filed the final transfer. 40% of my business holdings were now officially redirected into the Children's Foundation Margaret had championed. A new wing would be built in her name, the Margaret Crawford Resource Center. I'd keep enough to live comfortably, but the rest, that money would never reach Liam or Emma again. Not a dime. Later that week, I met Elise again, this time for dinner, a quiet Italian place on the north side, low lights, heavy curtains, the kind of place where people spoke softly and the wine list had its own leather binder. "You look better," she said, sliding into the booth. "I feel lighter," I replied. Not happy, not proud, but lighter. She smiled. "That's what happens when you take back what's yours." We talked for hours about the case, about Margaret, even about the past. I told her stories about when Liam was young, before ambition poisoned him. She listened without judgment, without interruption. When the check came, she grabbed it before I could. "Call it attorney's privilege," she said with a wink. As I walked her to her car, she paused by the door, hand on the handle. "You've still got a lot of living left to do, Michael. Don't spend it all looking backward." I nodded. "I won't, but I needed to finish this first." She smiled, then slipped behind the wheel and drove off into the night. I stood in the parking lot a minute longer, just breathing in the cold air. They thought they could bury me with a pen and a few legal tricks. They thought the name Crawford was a vault they could raid. But what they didn't understand, what they never understood, was that legacy isn't what you leave in a bank account. It's what you protect. The following week passed in uneasy silence. No calls from Liam, no desperate emails, not even a lawyer sniffing around. It was strange. After the chaos, the quiet felt unnatural, like the eye of a storm. But I didn't relax. I knew better. People like Liam and Emma didn't just walk away. They circled, waited, looked for cracks. Ron confirmed it 2 days later. "They're not gone," he said. "Just regrouping. Emma met with a different attorney yesterday. Younger guy, flashy suit, bad reputation. Litigator, worse, reputation for media stunts. The kind who leaks things to stir public sympathy." I gritted my teeth. Let them try. Everything sealed tight. Ron sighed. "You might want to prep for a hit piece. Maybe a story about a controlling father who abandoned his son. That kind of garbage." I didn't flinch. "Then we fight back the same way. Quiet, precise, documented." We hung up, and I pulled out the file I kept in the drawer behind Margaret's photo. It held every receipt, every transfer, every signed agreement Liam had ever been involved in, notarized, filed, witnessed. If they wanted to play dirty, I had soap to clean it up. Still, that night, I found myself pacing. Not because I was scared, but because I hated what this whole thing had turned me into. Paranoid, closed off, half living in a fortress of legal armor. Margaret would have hated it. She was soft where I was sharp, forgiving where I drew lines in cement. I stood at the foot of the stairs, staring at her photo for a long time, the silence thick around me. That's when the phone rang. It was Ellis. "You need to see something." She forwarded a video. I opened it. The footage started with Emma, walking into a boutique, arguing with a clerk. The audio was fuzzy, but clear enough to make out her voice. "Don't tell me it declined. Run it again. My husband's father is holding our money hostage. We're the rightful heirs. This is temporary." I paused the video. It wasn't just about the card declining. It was what she said. Holding our money hostage. Like I was some stranger, some enemy. They never saw me as family. Just a vault with a heartbeat. The next morning, a courier dropped off a letter at my front door. Thick paper. Gold foil on the edges. I didn't need to open it to know it was trouble. When I did, my stomach turned. It was a notice of intent to challenge. Liam and Emma had formally declared they were contesting the most recent will on the grounds of mental decline. They were going to try and claim I was unfit. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that bounced off the kitchen tile. Then I called Ellis. "They're doing it," I said. "They're actually doing it." Her voice didn't waver. "Let them. We've already anticipated it. I have medical records, cognitive evaluations, full documentation of every legal action we've taken. This isn't a case. It's a tantrum." I breathed slowly through my nose, steadying myself. "Make them regret it." "We will," she said, "but first we take it public." That word stopped me. Public? She explained the plan, a carefully crafted statement, a press release, a quiet leak to a journalist we trusted. Paint the full picture, without exaggeration, without spin, just the truth, documented, detailed, undeniable. "They're trying to assassinate your character, Michael," she said. "Let's show people who's really behind the curtain." I gave her the green light. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, staring out at the yard. The garden was still overgrown, but the sky was clear. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was bracing for something. I felt ready. The article dropped 2 days later. Headline: Chicago businessman's son attempts to seize estate through legal manipulation. It was clean, sharp, brutal in its honesty. Illis had worked closely with the journalist, feeding them verified documents, court filings, statements from my doctors, even excerpts from Emma's charity fraud case. The article painted a full picture, not just of the challenge to my will, but the pattern of manipulation, deceit, and financial misconduct leading up to it. Liam and Emma were exposed, not just to lawyers or creditors, to everyone. I didn't post it, didn't share it, I didn't need to. The article spread like wildfire through the business community. Board members called to offer support. Old friends I hadn't heard from in years left messages. Some just said, "Good for you." Others said, "About time." But the best part? Silence from Liam and Emma. No response, no statement, not even a lawyer's rebuttal. They were reeling. Ron called later that evening. "You just kicked the hornet's nest, buddy." "I didn't kick it," I said. "I torched it." He laughed, but it had a grim edge. "Just keep your guard up. Cornered animals bite." He wasn't wrong. That night, my security system pinged around 3:12 a.m., motion on the porch. I checked the feed. Same shadowy figure from before, hoodie up. This time, he lingered longer, hands in his pockets, like he wanted me to open the door. I didn't. I just saved the footage, emailed it to Ron, then went back to bed. The next morning, I drove out to the Crawford Automotive headquarters for the first time in months. I needed to see the place again. Remember what I'd built? Not what I was defending, but what I'd created from scratch. The building stood proud on the edge of the industrial district. Glass panels, steel beams, a fleet of branded vehicles in the lot. Employees inside were heads down, focused. But when I walked through, a few faces lit up. A young guy named Marcus from accounting stopped me in the hall. "Mr. Crawford," he said, a little nervous, "saw the article. We're all behind you." That meant something. I walked into the executive suite, stood in my old office, and looked out over the factory floor, machines whirring, workers moving, business as usual, untouched by Liam's mess. That's what mattered. By afternoon, the lawyer representing Liam finally called Elise, offered a resolution, a new agreement to end all legal challenges in exchange for a quiet cash settlement. She didn't even flinch. "Tell him no. Tell him if they want quiet, they can keep their mouths shut and walk away like they promised. But if they want a war, we've got fuel and fire." I was proud of her in that moment. She'd gone from lawyer to ally, and now she was my firewall. Later that night, I went for a walk. The air was cool, the kind that carried the weight of fall, even though summer hadn't fully let go. I passed the old school where Liam used to play baseball, remembered the way he'd sprint the bases, all legs and teeth, yelling for me to watch him every second. I watched back then. I really did. But somewhere along the line, he stopped caring whether I was watching. He only cared what I could give. Now he was watching me, watching it all slip away. As I turned the corner toward home, I saw a black car parked across the street, engine off, windows tinted. I kept walking, slowly, no sudden moves. Once I got inside, I locked the door, then opened the safe and checked the gun I hadn't touched in 20 years. Still clean, still loaded. This had started as a legal battle, but Liam had crossed a line, and I was done letting him inch closer to the edge. The next morning, I didn't even wait for coffee. I called Ron. There was a black car sitting outside my house all night. No plates, windows tinted. Didn't move. He didn't hesitate. "I'll run it down. But Michael, if they're escalating, we need to go full defense, not just cameras and locks. You need eyes, ears, and someone nearby who knows how to handle things if it gets messy." "Already opened the safe," I said. Ron didn't say anything for a moment. "Then we're past the point of paperwork. I'd built a life in blueprints and contracts, not bullets and bodyguards." But Liam had pushed this past property and into territory I never wanted to return to. The man I'd been in my younger years, the fighter, the one who clawed his way out of nothing, he wasn't gone, just sleeping. And now he was wide awake. By noon, Ron had ID'd the car, registered to a shell company in Missouri, one of 5 linked to an LLC Liam tried to use years ago to shield a failed crypto investment. It was his move, sloppy, predictable. "He's poking the fence," Ron said, "seeing if you'll bark or bite. I'll bite." That afternoon I drove to the lake. Margaret loved that spot, quiet, tucked behind a grove of pines, the kind of place where sound didn't carry. I brought her photo, a thermos of coffee, and a yellow notepad, and I started writing. Not for lawyers, not for Ron, not for Ellis, for Liam. I poured every truth I'd held back, how I'd watched him twist, lie, drain everyone around him, how I still remembered his laugh as a boy, how I never thought he'd be the kind of man who'd sit across from his own father with a forged will in hand. I told him I forgave him, but not in the way he wanted, not with money, not with access. I forgave him enough to walk away, to leave him with the wreckage he'd built and no more rope to hang it on me. I signed the letter, folded it, slid it into an envelope. I didn't know when I'd send it, maybe never. Maybe I'd leave it for the day the judge read the last ruling and the ink dried. But writing it gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks, control. That night I cooked for the first time in ages, real food, steak, greens, mashed potatoes. The kitchen smelled like my life used to, warm, familiar. I sat at the table alone, but not lonely. I was ready. Until the knock came, not the doorbell, a knock, hard, heavy, deliberate. I froze. The clock said 9:42 p.m. I grabbed the pistol from the drawer, stepped toward the hallway, and hit the porch light switch. Then I checked the monitor. Liam, standing there. No Emma. Just him in a soaked hoodie, eyes wide, hair matted like he hadn't slept in days. I opened the door, but only halfway. My hand stayed on the grip behind the doorframe. He looked me dead in the eyes. "Dad, I messed up. I don't know what I'm doing anymore." "Too late," I said. "You knew exactly what you were doing." "I didn't write that letter," he said, fast, desperate. "The one taped to your door. I swear it wasn't me." I didn't answer, didn't blink. His chest rose and fell like he'd run here from another city. "I think someone's following me." "Then you've got more problems than me." "I came to warn you," he said. "Whatever's coming, I think it's bigger than just us." I stepped out onto the porch, cold air tightening my jaw. "You finally lost control of your game, Liam, and now it's eating you alive." He nodded, slowly, then stepped back, eyes flicking to the shadows, and just like that, he disappeared into the dark. The second the door closed behind Liam, I double-locked it and reset the alarm. My hands weren't shaking, but my pulse was hammering. That visit wasn't about guilt. It was fear, the kind that clings to your ribs and makes you look over your shoulder in broad daylight. I sat back down at the kitchen table, the food now cold, the house still. Liam's words bounced around in my head. "I think someone's following me." He wasn't lying. I knew the look in his eyes. Not manipulation, not performance. Panic. At 7 a.m. sharp, I called Ron. "He came to my house last night," I said. "Said something's coming, something bigger." Ron didn't ask dumb questions. "I'll put another guy on your street and I'll pull his phone records. If there's chatter, we'll find it." "What if this is connected to the LLC stuff? That shell company car, Missouri registration?" "I was thinking the same," he said. "But if they're moving off paper, we're dealing with more than fraud. Might be laundering, might be mob money." That landed in my stomach like a brick. I'd spent my whole life avoiding shady partners, fast cash, dirty deals, and now my son, my blood, might have dragged us both into something far past courtrooms and custody clauses. Ellis called next. She'd seen the press follow up, a smear campaign, predictably weak. A blog post on some fringe site calling me a toxic patriarch who hoarded wealth and manipulated his son's legacy. Anonymous source. Clearly Emma. "I'm filing a takedown," she said. "They're grasping now." "Let them," I said. I've got bigger problems." I told her everything. Liam's visit, the shell companies, the suspicion something worse was hiding under the surface. Her voice tightened. "Michael, if any of this ties back to your business, we need to be proactive. Full audit, compliance check. Separate yourself legally and fast. I'm clean, but I'll do it." She paused, then lowered her voice. "You want me to contact the FBI?" I didn't answer right away. The idea of it made my chest tighten, like I was surrendering something I hadn't even fought for yet. "I'll think about it," I said. We ended the call, and I stared at the fireplace for what felt like an hour. Then I drove. No destination. Just needed the road. Miles blurred, trees, gas stations, the haze of morning traffic. Somewhere outside Aurora, I pulled over near a diner I used to visit with Margaret when times were tighter but simpler. I sat in the parking lot with the engine idling and remembered a night in that booth, Margaret telling me Liam would never know the weight we carried to give him a life without struggle. "He'll either be grateful," she said, "or hungry enough to eat the hand that feeds him." She saw it before I did. I drove back into the city and went straight to Ellis's office. She was already waiting with a manila folder and a hard look. "Here," she said, handing me the file. "Corporate firewall. If anything comes down the line, you're shielded. But I'm also having a friend look into Emma. She's tied to more than we thought." What kind of more?" "She owns 2 luxury condos under different names, paid cash, and one of the bank accounts she used, flagged by Treasury last year." That did it. "File the alert," I said. "Contact whoever you need. I'm done waiting." When I left the office, The sun was starting to drop, orange streaks lighting up the glass towers. I drove home slow, thinking. Emma was the rot. Liam was just the weak branch she clung to. But now, if she was tied to criminal money, this whole thing wasn't just about my will. It was about survival. I pulled into the driveway and saw the envelope tucked under the welcome mat. No stamp, no address, just my name in blocky red ink. I didn't open the envelope right away. I brought it inside, placed it on the kitchen counter, and stared at it while the kettle hissed behind me. Something about that red ink, too bold, too deliberate, put a twist in my gut. Whoever left it wanted me to know this was personal. After a long minute, I peeled it open. No letterhead, no signature, just one sentence typed in all caps across a plain white sheet. Back off, or everything you love burns. No threats of court. No mention of money. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. This was raw, criminal, dangerous. I took a photo of the letter, zipped it in a folder, and sent it straight to Ron and Elise. Then I locked it in the safe and sat down, my hands pressed flat against the table. This had crossed a line, not just legal war, not even personal betrayal. This was a threat against my life. Ron called me within 10 minutes. You need to leave the house, now. I'm not running. I'm not saying run. I'm saying relocate, temporarily, somewhere no one expects. Let me sweep the house top to bottom and get some muscle watching your back 24/7. You think it's real? I asked. I think people with nothing left to lose don't bluff. He wasn't wrong. I packed a bag, a couple of shirts, Margaret's photo, the Glock. Then I drove to a friend's cabin 2 hours west out near Rockford, old place, remote, no neighbors, just woods, wind, and quiet. By the time I got there, the sky had turned gunmetal gray. The trees swayed like they knew something I didn't. I parked in the gravel driveway, unlocked the cabin, and stepped into the musty air of old cedar and dust. It wasn't luxury, but it was safe. Or at least, I hoped it was. That night, I sat in the armchair by the window with the Glock on the table beside me, watching shadows crawl across the porch, every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Ellis called first thing in the morning. We traced the printer, she said. That letter? Came from a commercial shop in Oak Park, paid in cash, no cameras. But it narrows the radius? Emma. She's the most likely. Her finances are tanking. Her name's about to hit federal databases, but she won't go down alone. I need to end this, I said. We will, she promised, but we have to do it clean. Then Ron called. I've got something, he said. Liam's been reaching out to Emma's former contacts, real estate brokers, 2 names tied to Eastern European laundering networks. My stomach tightened. You're telling me they brought mob money into this? I'm telling you, he said. Emma's not just playing dirty. She's playing with fire, and Liam's too dumb to see he's a pawn in someone else's game. I sat in the cabin, staring at the frost crawling up the window pane, thinking about everything that had led here. Margaret's warnings, the first time Liam begged for a loan, the night Emma smiled while sliding forged documents across my table. None of this was random. It had been building for years. I just hadn't seen it until now. I stood, walked outside into the cold morning air, and called Alice. It ends now. She didn't ask what I meant. She just said, then get back to the city. We'll finish this the right way. I drove the entire way back with one hand on the wheel and the other close to the weapon on my lap. I wasn't going home. I was going to war. I pulled into the garage at Elise's firm just before dusk. The sky over Chicago looked like bruised steel, heavy, with clouds that hadn't decided if they wanted to break yet. Ellis met me at the private elevator, eyes sharp, coat already off, sleeves rolled up. She meant business. Ron's downstairs with the footage, she said as we walked. The print shop, car plates, and we traced a payment Emma made 2 weeks ago to a man tied to one of those real estate laundering rings Ron mentioned. He's not small time. Name, I asked. Victor Malenko. Chicago PD's had him on a watch list since '08. He's suspected in 3 disappearances, but nothing ever stuck. And she paid him? Illis handed me a printed transaction summary. $25,000, in cash equivalents, all from her shadow account. I took the paper, hands tight. So this wasn't a bluff. No, she said. This was a warning shot, and she's armed. We sat down in the conference room, blinds closed, lights low. Ron came in next, dropped a flash drive on the table, and plugged it into the screen. A grainy video played Emma at a quiet cafe, sliding an envelope across the table to a man with a shaved head and leather jacket. Ron hit pause, zoomed. It was Malenko. "There's your guy," Ron said, "and he's local. 2 blocks from where that shell company's P.O. box is registered." "Which Liam used," I muttered. Ron nodded. "We've got more. Liam tried to access one of your old company credit lines through a dummy portal. He failed, but the attempt flagged a system warning. They're still digging for an angle." Illis sat back. "You ready for my suggestion?" I looked between them. "Say it. We go to the feds, not later. Now. This is beyond fraud. This is organized. We deliver every document, every connection, everything we've got. And we request immediate federal protection for you, Michael. This isn't about your estate anymore. It's about your safety." I didn't argue. Illis picked up her phone. "I've got a contact at the Bureau. She'll meet us at the Chicago field office first thing tomorrow." Ron stood. "You won't be alone. I'll be close. Eyes on everything." I left that building knowing we were past the chessboard. This wasn't strategy now. This was survival. At home, I double-checked every lock, every window. I kept the lights on, the cameras rolling, and I didn't sleep. Morning came gray and silent. I met Elise outside the federal building at 8:15 sharp. She handed me a folder thick with evidence, signed statements, emails, transfer histories, surveillance stills. It looked like a novel written in desperation, betrayal, and criminal ink. Agent Daniels met us in a sterile interview room, late 40s, polite but cold-eyed, the kind of man who didn't waste time with small talk. He flipped through the folder as Ellis explained, point by point, how this went from family dispute to financial conspiracy to criminal threat. Daniels stopped at the photo of Malenko. "This one we know," he looked at me. "And you're saying your daughter-in-law paid him 25 grand while contesting your will?" "She wasn't contesting," I said. "She was preparing to destroy." Daniels nodded. "We'll open an investigation immediately. You'll have a protection detail starting today. Mr. Crawford, I need you to know, once we enter this officially, there's no walking it back." "I don't want to walk it back," I said. "I want to walk away from it alive." He closed the file. "Then let's begin." I shook his hand, stood up, and realized for the first time in weeks. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was steady. I was ready. By the time I left the federal building, the clouds had cleared. The city looked different now, not lighter exactly, but exposed, like something rotten that had finally been pulled into daylight. I wasn't just the guy who got screwed by his own son anymore. I was the man standing between a criminal scheme and a federal case. Agent Daniels assigned 2 marshals to me, low profile. One stayed parked down the street. The other rotated shifts around the house. I didn't argue. Pride was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Later that afternoon, Ellis called with news. "They're raiding Malenko's properties tonight. The Bureau fast-tracked it. They're looking to intercept anything that ties him directly to Emma or to Liam." "What do I do?" I asked. "You wait," she said, "and stay quiet. If anything happens, you call me first." I hung up, but waiting was never my strength. I needed to do something. So I called Ron. "You still watching Liam?" "Yeah," he said. "He's jumpy, pacing his condo like a caged animal. Tried calling Emma 6 times today. No answer." "She knows it's over," I said. "She's running." "You want me to lean on him?" "Not yet. Let him stew." By evening, I poured myself a drink and sat in the den with the old photo album from the 90s. Me, Margaret, Liam. Back when smiles were real and everything felt salvageable. I kept staring at one photo in particular. Liam on my shoulders at Navy Pier, cotton candy in one hand, the other wrapped tight in my hair. That boy had no idea what he'd grow into. Just after midnight, Ron called again. This time, his voice was different. "They got her," he said. Emma, trying to board a charter flight out of Milwaukee, fake ID, 28 grand in cash and a burner phone in her purse. I sat up, every nerve in my body lighting up. And Liam? He wasn't with her, but it doesn't matter. She rolled. What? She flipped, he said. Told the feds everything, the charity scam, the forged will, the payments to Malenko, even the threat letter left at your place. She admitted. She orchestrated it. I stood in the middle of the living room, the weight of it finally crashing into my chest. She confessed? Full cooperation deal, Ron said. Malenko's already in custody. She's trying to cut time off with evidence. And Liam? Has no idea. Yet. I hung up and stared out the window. The street was quiet, the security car idling down the block. And somewhere, my son was sitting alone in a condo, waiting for a call that would never come. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. The next morning, Elise met me in her office. She looked tired but victorious. It's done, she said. Emma gave them everything. The entire scheme's been documented. The investigation is expanding. Multiple federal charges pending. Liam? They'll bring him in within 48 hours, based on what Emma gave up. He's facing conspiracy, wire fraud, attempted coercion. I nodded. Good. Ellis leaned forward. There's one more thing. Emma's statement includes a final letter. She wrote it last night. It's addressed to you. She handed me the envelope. I didn't open it right away, not because I cared what she had to say, but because, for once, I wanted the silence more than the answer. Back home, I stood in the study, the morning sun finally reaching through the blinds. I placed the letter next to Margaret's photo, untouched. I'd let the courts deal with Emma. Let the law swallow her and Liam whole. Me? I was already somewhere else, free. Liam was arrested 2 days later. Ron texted me a photo, grainy, taken from across the street. Liam in handcuffs, hoodie pulled low, head down, as 2 agents led him out of his condo. No crowd, no spectacle, just quiet, clinical justice. He didn't even fight, just walked with them like he finally understood the weight of his choices. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt done. Ellis called later that afternoon to confirm the charges. They've got enough to bury him, she said. Conspiracy to defraud, forgery, financial coercion. It's all there. Does he know Emma flipped? He does now. She hesitated. Michael. The plea deal she took? She's going to serve time, but not as much as him. I didn't respond. I didn't care how many years they got. That part was out of my hands. Let the system deal with them. I was through dragging their names across my heart. That evening, I walked down to Margaret's garden. I'd started restoring it the week before, clearing weeds, replanting what I could remember she loved. Daffodils, marigolds, those little blue flowers I never learned the name of but always saw in her hands after church. I planted a bench at the edge, sat there now, watching the wind ripple through the leaves. The world didn't feel lighter, but I did. The legacy they tried to steal, I'd rewritten it. Ron stopped by the next morning unannounced, brought coffee and 2 donuts, just like old times. We sat on the porch, both of us silent for a while, watching the neighbor's kid try to ride a bike with no training wheels. You know, Ron finally said, I've seen a lot of ugly stuff. Broken families, bitter old grudges. But what they did to you, he shook his head. That was next level. Yeah, I said, sipping the coffee, but I survived it. You didn't just survive, he said. You outlasted. We sat there a bit longer, and then he stood. You ever need anything again, Michael? You call me. Doesn't matter what. I know, I said. After he left, I went inside, poured a glass of bourbon, and finally opened Emma's letter. It was short. Just a paragraph handwritten in tight, elegant script. I never loved you. I loved your money. I think deep down you always knew. I'm sorry that I broke your son. I'm not sorry I tried to win. Some people aren't built to lose quietly. I folded the letter and burned it in the fireplace. Some things didn't deserve a drawer. Later that week, Ellis joined me at the garden. She brought wine, I brought silence. We drank at the bench while the sky faded from blue to purple to black. "You ever think about starting over?" she asked quietly. "Every day lately." She looked over at me, a little smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Well, maybe don't wait too long." We sat there until the bottle ran dry and the quiet between us wasn't empty. It was earned. The next morning I went down to the Children's Foundation. The wing with Margaret's name was already under construction. A small army of workers in neon vests were laying the foundation, their machines humming, dirt flying. The director walked me through the plans, after-school programs, summer mentoring, job training, real things, tangible. Kids who needed chances, not inheritances. "You've changed a lot of lives already," she told me. I looked out at the site, sunlight bouncing off rebar and raw steel. Not enough, but I'm not done. That night, back at the house, I sat at the study desk with a fresh sheet of paper. No legal clauses, no signatures, just me and a pen. I started a letter, not to Liam, not to Emma, but to the kids who'd walk into that center with nothing. Tough times don't define you. What you fight for does. I signed it, folded it, and slid it into a new file. Legacy, finally, rewritten on my terms. And this time, nobody could touch it.